With that, I shall now hand over to Shavkat, who I understand has the most interesting part of the story, which is tech innovation. Shavkat, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. It has indeed been a very fascinating discussion since it began in the morning. And for some of you who have joined us for the first time at a BIPSS event, Global Trends is a traditional event that we do every January. So for the last however many years, we have been meeting every year in January talking about the global trends of the year. I think a lot has already been said about the change in the international system and the monumental shifts that are taking place in international relations. I would therefore, ladies and gentlemen, like to turn your gaze away from international relations and foreign policy to a more complex world of how we are entering the technopolar world, how technology is shaping our understanding of security. We also meet at a very interesting time when we are just little more than a fortnight away from a national election. So a new government which takes over in the middle of February will have to contend with a very different international system than what we have seen before. So it is also our earnest hope that many of the points that we discuss will be shared with the incoming administration, and it will help them have an understanding about the international order or the regional order they're about to inherit. So as I said, we have now entered the technopolar order, where international relations are reorganizing around technology blocks. Alignment is now demanded not just in policy, but in infrastructure, in supply chains, and data governance. Quite often in Bangladesh, we look at security, which is often devoid of an understanding of some of these technological trends, or dare I say, we have a very classical look at security, which unfortunately is not adequate in 2026. We are entering a new arms race of sovereign technology, where fear of digital sabotage is driving countries to nationalize critical infrastructure. For instance, European low Earth orbit or IRIS. We're also entering an era where gray zone warfare or hybrid warfare would be the new norm, where countries would fight wars but remain below the threshold. When we met here 12 months ago to talk about Global Trends 2025, little did we know that 2025 would see probably the highest concentration of state-on-state conflicts in a single calendar year, where at least on 2 or 3 occasions, nuclear-powered countries were fighting one another. And I don't think we need to remind you how hairy things had become in May in particular, when India and Pakistan were locked in a duel. So what I'm trying to underscore here is that state-on-state conflict, many people had said after the Cold War ended that state-on-state conflict is a thing of the past. And then when we went through an entire phase where we thought that we were only going to deal with counterinsurgency and so on. But the reality is state-on-state conflict is here, it's back, and it is happening with greater intensity. But at the same time, gray zone warfare and hybrid warfare is becoming more prominent or becoming more commonplace. Therefore, in the case of Bangladesh, because I always feel it is very important for us to situate our conversation around Bangladesh, because that's what we are dealing with, and it's important that we have to find a context how it relates to Bangladesh. So we have to develop a greater understanding in Bangladesh about gray zone and hybrid warfare. Now, talking about technology, I think the most important aspect to remember is that in this new intelligence age, as it is called, we are shifting from generative to agentic AI. And the defining shift of 2026 is that AI no longer just creates content, but under agentic AI, it executes action autonomously. We're entering an era of post-human automation, where robotics has moved from factories to unstructured spaces in urban and military space, where the industrial robot market has now hit $16.7 million, with Asia accounting for 74% of deployment actually living the West trailing. We often don't remember these things because how robotics is going to reshape the way we look at warfare, for instance. The focus, ladies and gentlemen, has moved from detection to prediction, where it creates an inequality of resilience where only wealthy nations can afford the predictive tools to stay safe. Any discussion on security and technology cannot be complete unless we talk about societal impact. And what do we see? We see a collapse of trust. Deep fakes no longer just deceive, they create paralysis. The strategic goal of disinformation is to cause citizens and leaders to doubt all verifiable truth, freezing decision-making during crises. Ever since the monsoon revolution took place in Bangladesh in August 2024, we have seen how various actors have used disinformation, misinformation systematically to reach their gains. And even as we go towards national election 2026, we are seeing how disinformation is playing out at every level. But what I'm trying to underscore here is that we are entering a period where there would be a complete epistemic breakdown, where we would see things and do not know what to believe. And for people who are trying to govern a country, this creates a huge challenge. And again, we have to fall back on technology because with AI becoming more powerful, disinformation would only become that much lethal. Many experts are now calling it a proof of life failure because artificial intelligence generated biometrics are rendering traditional identity checks obsolete. You can recreate an individual's biometric data. So how do we actually prove that a fingerprint that is used is actually my fingerprint and not created by AI? So there was a point in time where we thought biometric data, whether fingerprint or iris or what have you, would provide us with the most foolproof security, but AI is soon going to render that fairly useless. Citizens are opting out of failing state institutions and bunkerizing, there's a new term that has emerged, bunkerizing themselves with private security and off-grid technology, where the state is often, in many cases, losing its monopoly of providing security to its citizens. So the objective of all this, what I'm trying to say here, is that AI is going to reshape our understanding of life, society, and security in a way that we are not completely prepared for it. I would be remiss if I don't talk a little bit about terrorism, although we sometimes want to pretend in Bangladesh that we don't have a threat. But the threat is very much out there. Let us look at how terror groups can actually use disruptive technologies. The kind of commercial drone technology that is now available in the market, if that lands in the hands of terrorist groups, I only shudder to think the kind of damage that they would be able to do. For example, commercial quadcopters, which can overwhelm conventional air defense by attacking from multiple angles simultaneously, carrying small explosives or chemical payloads into crowded soft targets. There is also AI-driven shadow radicalization, where recruiters are using generative AI to build empathetic chatbots that operate 24/7 on encrypted apps. These bots identify vulnerable individuals and groom them with personalized, persuasive dialogue, often in local dialects, at a scale no human team could match, automating the radicalization funnel. Nearly 2 decades ago, when I first started working on terrorism and violent extremism, and we have a group in Bangladesh called Jamaatul Mujahideen Bangladesh, or JMB, and they started using video CDs. We thought that was the ultimate innovation a terror group can do. But just imagine, in a span of 19 years or 18 years, the kind of leap that has been made. The deepfake propaganda and proof of life issue that I mentioned earlier, or disinformation, can also be used or is being used by terrorist and extremist groups. And then we get into a more complicated world of cryptocurrency, or what is now known as chain hopping, using automated chain hopping or rapidly moving funds across different blockchains and utilizing decentralized finance mixers without human intermediaries, making funds nearly impossible to trace. Because the fundamental rule of going after a terror group is follow the money. But that can now be completely redefined using cryptocurrency and blockchains. And then we get into another very important aspect, hybrid arsenals or 3D printing. With 3D printers, you can now create weapons and other things which are hybrid weapons which can be used, 3D printed by terror groups to achieve their gains. So while technology, ladies and gentlemen, is a major force multiplier for us, and we must embrace technology to remain relevant, technology or the disruptive aspects of technology is something, as practitioners of security, we must always remember. An aspect of security which is highly pertinent for Bangladesh but often does not get the kind of focus it deserves in the international security discourse is environment. We are no longer looking at 1.5 degrees Celsius as a target. The focus has now shifted to local economic survival, where climate policy, unfortunately, is no longer global, but has become entirely driven by immediate national interests. And as this global race for strategic minerals intensifies, we also have to see how it will impact on our understanding of environmental security. Climate change is now a productivity killer, where extreme heat, according to economists, is causing structural GDP losses. So as the climate warms, I mean, we are on the 26th day of January and we already need air conditioning. So I don't think I need to belabor on the point that how climate change has happened. I still remember growing up in Bangladesh where winter would persist until late February, and those days are long gone. But also we have to look at the green resources war that is emerging, where transition to clean energy could also lead to a geopolitical flashpoint as powers are fighting for control of green minerals as well, such as lithium and gallium, which are dirty to extract but essential to apply. So there is a correlation between climate change, environmental security, and this acquisition of strategic minerals. So to sum up, I would say in 2026, we are in the era of global integration has in many ways definitively ended, replaced by what I would like to call fragmented reality, defined by transactionism, sovereignty, and survival. We are no longer facing isolated risks, but what I would say a convergence of breakdown. The geopolitical order is fracturing into blocks, the climate is breaching operational thresholds, and the digital world, as I said earlier, is suffering an epistemic collapse of trust. So we are entering a very complex milieu in 2026, and as this nation, whose democratic aspirations have long been suppressed, finds a form of utterance on the 12th of February, these are some of the issues that our new government will have to deal with. I'll end there. Thank you very much. I want to begin by talking a little bit about the very pertinent remark by Air Vice Marshal Mahmood. We need to take a fresh look at how we structure and equip our military, because I think it's very pertinent, as Ambassador Shamim said, and we should also situate our conversation on Bangladesh and see how these global trends shape us or help us. As a new government takes over, and I have been saying this even when the interim government took over, one of the fundamental tasks before that new government would be to create a comprehensive national security strategy, which this country has never had. And we need to see that within our limited resources, how we can expand or develop our military power. Today's military power is not defined just by manpower or human resources. And here I want to quote the Chief of the General Staff of the British Army, General Sir Rowley Walker, who uses the term doubling the lethality, because he cannot expand the number of troops, but what Sir Rowley says that he can actually double the lethality by bringing technology as a force multiplier. That is the kind of route that we should also take. South Asian militaries are always going to be manpower heavy because we have large populaces, but at the same time, we really have to see how technology can be a force multiplier. We also have to see whether our traditional understanding of what is big ticket items for purchase is what should dominate our thinking, or we should look at better mobility, increase firepower, and things like that. For example, in the army, and I'm the son of a gunner, so I will be remiss if I don't talk about artillery. We have to take a really close, and there are several gunners in the room, so they'll bear me out. We have to take a close look at how we are modernizing our artillery. We have made a major innovation. We have decoupled artillery and air defense, but we have to really see how we augment both field artillery and air defense, because recent conflicts in this region have shown us the vitality of both field artillery and air defense in modern warfare. So I think these are some of the things we need to look at. To all serving and retired military officers in the room, with the utmost respect, I want to make a submission. We also need to move away from this idea that if you want to talk about defense and military or security issues, you have to have a rank before your name. The greatest strategists and military analysts in this world are civilians. Sir Lawrence Friedman or Sir Michael Walker are cases in point. We have a lot of trained resource in this country who have studied strategic studies, who have studied defense studies, who have studied information warfare. We are not utilizing them. It is very heartening that all three services now have their own think tanks, which is a major development. We need to harness, and we have the Naval Think Tank's head very kindly present with us today. We have to harness these think tanks. We have to harness our national think tank BIPSS, revitalize them. New Bangladesh, under whoever is elected to office, must have a new look at security. The old days of friendship with all and malice to none are over. I want to focus on just one aspect, and all eyes are now on 12th of February. And what is our expectation when it comes to global trends or security under a new government? Our expectation is, as I said a few moments ago, a fresh look at our security, and foreign policy based on persuasion of national interest, because the only thing that is permanent and eternal in international relations is national interest, and a non-emotional, non-populism driven look at security and foreign policy. For too long, we have either been driven by emotion, or we have been driven by populism fueled by YouTube evangelists. Time is for us to take control of our security, of our foreign policy, and really give us a foreign policy and security which a post-monsoon revolution new Bangladesh demands. That is our aspiration from the new government. And the next time we will meet under a new administration, so I hope many of our aspirations will slowly be translated into policy. Thank you very much.